welcome. Are you at the right place? Yes, you are. This is a full faculty development plan, and like I said a little bit before, there's going to be a hands-on component to it. I will give you the template that we use for the stuff that I'm talking about. So I want to get started by talking a little bit about what my experience was. And my experience was we didn't have anything like this in our department. We still don't, in fact, have anything like a faculty development plan. There are some departments on campus that do. If yours is one of them, that's great. You may have already seen one of these things, but you probably wouldn't be here if your department had one. Even if your department does have one, it may not be as detailed as this, and so this might be beneficial for you. Had I had something like this, I think, in retrospect, I could have been much more productive. I tell people I'm happy with my productivity and where I am and that kind of thing, but I could have been more focused. So that's really one of the purposes of this, in fact, is to get you to become more focused. And it's not like okay, you could complete this and everything will fall in place for you. Of course not. That's not what's going to happen. But if you start doing this, if you start working on a plan, even if it's just for you, it's not the culture of your department or whatever, to do one of these things, then I think you'll see real benefits of that. The people that have done this from previous years, so this is a component of the Faculty Fellows program, people that have done this, I think, have attested to its usefulness. Part of that is how you go about creating it, and that's what I want to talk about today. Some suggestions on the best ways to create something like this. First, just what exactly is this faculty development plan? And it's a little bit, by the way, I will share this PowerPoint with you if you want. That's one of the reasons why we take emails down. We will also share the template that I'll give you a paper copy of, so you can get the digital version of that to actually work on. That's what we typically share with people. But it's a long-term plan, and what we mean by long-term plan is up to you. Okay, what's your most reasonable time frame? We don't say specifically it's a one-year plan, okay? Because in some departments that doesn't really make as much sense as maybe a 3-year plan. In some departments it makes perfect sense to be a one-year plan. So that's your situation. You have to figure out what is it best for me. But it is generally not a semester-long plan. Okay? It's a year-long or more plan. So when you start this, that's something you'll have to think about, because we're kind of in the middle. We're at the midpoint of our first semester of this academic year. It might not be the best time for you to actually create this until into the spring semester, looking ahead to next year. Okay, that's one of the things to consider. It's not necessarily a thing that you have to do immediately or rush into, but if you think about these things, many of the goals and stuff that you start setting for yourself, you can start working on right now, and that's one of the real advantages of it. Okay, so I'm assuming that all of us are having to deal with teaching, research, and service in some way or another. If you're tenure track, yes. And even if you're not, there are cases where there are research expectations as well as service expectations. So that's what the full plan is. There's a modified version of this kind of plan, which is just focusing on your teaching. And that's what we did last week. The workshop on that was just the teaching version of that. Were you here for that, Steve? You were, right, last week. Okay. Good. Not that I know of. Okay. That's good. If none of this rings a bell, you weren't here. Okay. So there's really just 4 components. It's a really simple idea, but it has a lot of power, I think. It's got a lot of range of application for your own personal professional development, both personal and professional. It's got a self-assessment component, and I'll go into each of these components in a second in some detail. Once you've assessed what your strengths, weaknesses are, that kind of thing, goals that you have, how to achieve those goals, and then there's a reporting component to it. And there's also sharing out with somebody else what your plan is. When I get to that, I'll reiterate this point, which is we know that there's value in not you just creating this plan yourself and keeping it to yourself. So you'll see I'll have some suggestions on sharing that, because that creates a kind of a social expectation. It puts it out a little more in the public, depending on who you share it with, and that's an issue that you have to think about. But that's really valuable then. If you assess the outcomes of whether you met your goals, then you could talk back with that person that you initially shared it with, and it creates that. You want to basically, if the norm in your department, which probably is the case, isn't that you're expected to do this kind of thing, then you create that kind of expectation on yourself. That's what we're encouraging you to try to do. So I would like you to look at this. What do you think? Is it reasonable? Okay, at the end, here's what I did. Maybe we weren't so reasonable in this particular goal that we were trying to do. And so you cycle it through, and then your next year's plan. And so basically what I recommend is you do this every meaningful time period for you, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, until you're tired of it, or until you've gotten into that routine where you really are happy with the balance of your teaching, research, and service, and you feel like you're being productive in all those areas, which is really what the purpose of this kind of plan is. Okay? Stop me anytime if you have comments or questions. Okay? So why is it necessary? Who's brand new? Anybody's brand new? Nancy, are you? Steve, right? Okay. Brand new into the department, but you had been teaching for a long time, is that right? But you have to learn what the culture is of your department, and there's all kinds of criteria and things. And so if you're really new, there are new criteria. And even like Lauren, in your case, you've been here a long time, but now there's new responsibilities and stuff. And your mindset is really having to change, right? Despite what you were used to and stuff. So this is a way to kind of get a handle on those kind of expectations. And the problem with expectations, if you don't realize this yet, is sometimes they're very confusing and vague and they're contradictory. And I thought you said this. No, that's not really what we meant. That's what happens in reality, okay, in departments. Sorry to have to tell you that, but that happens. And it happens fairly often. And so you're basically putting yourself at risk. I don't know if that may be too strong a term, but not knowing what the departmental and the college and the university too, but really the departmental and the college expectations are, not being clear about those is dangerous. I'll just put it that way. And so those expectations, do you know, are they really clear? If you have a promotion and tenure committee or a development committee or a department chair who sits down and shares with you, here's exactly what our expectations are, that's great. Good for you. Guess what? That's really not the norm here because our department chairs are already, overworked and underappreciated and so on. And this is pretty low on their priority list. That looks good. Okay, so understand this is the typical situation. And like I keep saying, if it's not typical for you, good, lucky you. But I'll tell you that the majority of departments, it's also difficult to articulate. You might be in an environment where it's sink or swim. Good luck. That's basically what we'll tell you is, and we'll see if you can figure out what we really expect you to do. And you don't have to tolerate that. I'm speaking in kind of harsh terms, but you really don't. You don't have to tolerate that. You can seek out information on what are the expectations. If that can't be articulated, well, how am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to be doing? Okay, and you can maybe try to create, I'm not saying step on toes and try to create a culture change yourself. I'm just saying look out for yourself. Okay. Some of those are difficult to put into practice. How are you supposed to get research done when you've got a program review that's taking up all of your spare time plus, for example, and other expectations that they've already told you have to do, and you're juggling all these other things? I don't know, but a plan would help, okay? At least in my department, sometimes things are contradictory. What? You said I was supposed to do that, but it took me away from doing this, and now you're saying that was important? What am I supposed to do? Okay? And they also change over time. So when I first came here, this is what I was supposed to do. I've been doing that for the last 3 years, and now we decided to change that. You should have been aware that they were changing it. It should have been information communicated to you in the department. But that might not have been the case if your promotion and tenure committee is changing the criteria, and they're not sharing that with the department at large. They may not be. Okay? So I'm trying to scare you. But there's a reason for that, and that is you can do something about this state of affairs. I think this is fairly accurate in most departments. Okay? So what comes to the rescue? The FDP, the Faculty Development Plan. We hope. All right. So it'll get at some of those cultural, departmental, political issues potentially. It will help you to manage that some, but it's got other benefits that are completely independent of that. One is it's just a general time and effort management tool. And most of us, even if you're really well organized and stuff, I consider myself to be pretty well organized. That's why I've been able to be successful, but that's also why I said, well, if I had one of these, I could have been more focused. It would have helped me more. And so it's just, I think most everybody would agree, I could do better at managing my time, my effort, and so on. So use this as a tool for that. Again, kind of outside of your departmental or college or the university requirements, to see that you're successful here as a faculty member, think bigger picture too. I mean, in my discipline, in my career, how do I want to develop? So you think of this as that's why we call it a faculty development plan. Think of it as your personal and professional plan for development. You don't need to do this. Like I said, most of us haven't had to do this, and we've been successful. But it's been like pinball, random almost, in terms of whether I'm successful and what direction I'm successful. So this is a more proactive approach to ensuring or helping to ensure your success. This gets back to specifically this next reason or benefit is specifically your department and expectations. You all know there's a third-year review. You know that, right? That's kind of like the midstream if you're on tenure track. And sometimes there's surprises. This is where you don't want to have surprises. So it's like what's the medical term? Not a booster shot, but kind of an immunization or something against the negative, unpleasant surprises associated with that third year. It's a developmental review. It's designed to help you to make sure that you're successful. You want to get to the third year review period where it's like, oh, you're doing great. This looks great. Just keep doing what you're doing. If that's what your department chair tells you and your review development committee tells you, okay, pretty good. But no guarantees when you get to promotion and tenure, because things could change between them. So again, being structured and planful and strategic and organized is good for us. Okay. And then even more broadly than just how I want to develop as a professional, how do I want to develop in my career, you can use this as, I'm happy with where I am, but I'd really like to branch out, or this is where I'd like to shift my emphasis. And that's more the longer term use of an FDP, okay? So this particular year, this is what I'm going to try to do to make sure I've got everything balanced in the way that I'm expected to balance things. But in 5 years, I'd really like to be more of this. And so I would try to build that into my long-term plan, which is I'm going to shift over. Sometimes that does happen. It depends on your rank and status and things like that. In reality, people who are like full professors at most universities tend to focus more on service, for example, than they do on research. There's a shift there. And this is important for us. And in fact, at MTSU, we're almost at a crisis period. I don't know if this is true in your department, but across several departments, we're extremely top-heavy, which is good because we have that institutional knowledge and we have people that have been here a long time and really know how things work. But those folks are going to be leaving in droves in the next few years across multiple departments. And there's a lot of concern about that in departments and across, administration is worried about that too. Who is going to fill in and understand what that. So that's just a little tangent there, but I thought you might be interested in that. Okay, so here are the components then. Now here's where we want to get specific. I'll briefly describe these and then give you an example, and then I'll give you the template, and we can do a little activity and work on that for about 10 minutes or so. The self-assessment is both your strengths and weaknesses you'll see in the template. Where do you want to increase? What do you want to improve upon? What are you good at? Because it's kind of a balance of both of those for you to be successful as a faculty member. You want to improve upon your weaknesses, but you also want to capitalize on your strengths. And those sometimes are separate. I know what my strengths are. I'm good at this. I'm able to publish in this area or write in this area or present or whatever it is. So I'm going to really focus on that so I look good, so it looks good. So I'll have a lot of things to add to my CV or what have you. But I still want to improve in this area. So what we do is, for each of the main components of teaching, research, and service, we ask you to go through and do this process. So do the assessment, then set up the goals. Okay? So what are your short-term and long-term goals in that domain? Gets back to what I was talking about before. Is it the next year? Is it the next 2 years? Up to you. This is where you can individualize it for yourself. Then we know there's actually research on goal setting and achieving your goals and what kind of goals are most likely to be achievable and things like that. So part of this is based on that research. But this is the difference between setting a goal for yourself and actually articulating what the plans are to meet that goal. You know the difference, right? There's a big difference between, that's my goal, I like to do this, the end. Probably not likely to meet that goal, less likely to meet that goal if compared to, here's how I'm going to do that. Okay, so this is like the really essential part of the FDP actually is, now that I know what my strengths and weaknesses are, what my goals are, what am I going to do it? And of course, that's the most difficult thing to actually do. This is coming in, I don't have time. I was supposed to have set this amount of time aside for my service activities or my research writing or whatever. Another week went by. Guess how much I wrote? And then another week and another week. So this is what happens in reality. We're all like this all the time. But if you have this referent of your plan to go back to, at least it'll make you feel guilty on occasion, and it might push you. I mean, that's one way to look at it. The other is it's a guide for me. And then the end of year assessment is then whatever your time period is, did I meet those goals? Yes, no. And in fact, when we've looked at our own FPPs and we've talked to people that have done the Faculty Fellows Program, usually it's like, no, I did not meet all my goals. I've had a few cases of people that said, I met pretty much every one of my goals. And I say, congratulations, because that's unusual. It's usually like, I had 5 goals and I got 3 of them done. And in my case, just personally, I overlist goals. I have too many things to do. I have too many irons in the fire and stuff. And I realize that when I make a list up for the beginning of the semester, over the summer, my projects or whatever, there might be 15 things, literally. It's like, I know that's no way am I going to get those done. But if I get 7 or 8 of them done, or maybe in a good summer, 10 of them done, then okay, I should be happy with that, even though I didn't get all the things I wanted to get done. If you want something done, who should you ask? A busy person, right? That's what the administration thinks. And that's what happens quite often. So partly, it's sort of that mentality. So in the balance of what are the goals, I don't think you should worry about, it's only things that I know I'm absolutely going to be able to do. That's not really that useful for you because you want to push, it's kind of the balance of your skills and the challenge that you have. Okay, are you in a situation where you can kind of push yourself and maybe reach some other goals that would be really good if you could meet them? Then I would include them in my plan and not feel bad if I didn't make them. That just means I adjust it for my next plan, if that makes sense. Okay? So, in terms of your goals and the paths to achieving them, here's where some of that goal research comes into play. We know there are certain kind of goals that are better to set in something like this, and actually in many contexts. You can probably guess what are bad goals, like really general, no specific time frame, things like that. So you'll see, is it realistic? Can you really do that? So if somebody comes to me and says, I'm going to publish 15 papers this coming year. Really? How are you going to do that? I don't think anybody at the university does that. That seems unrealistic to me. Of course, if they do that, but what I was saying before, no, you didn't do that, but you did 7 or 8. That's really good too, because not too many people do that either. So realistic, reachable, are you actually able within your time frame to meet that goal? You have to be the judge of that, but this is where feedback from others can help you a lot, and this is where your departmental culture comes into play. Is this reasonable? Is it a reachable goal? Would I actually be able to, is it relevant to the expectations that are for me? And concrete is a really important part of goal setting. You'll see the example I use here, really specific. The more specific you can be, the more likely you are to be able to work towards the goal and to meet that goal. So you don't want really abstract, and you want something that you can actually assess, measure, quantify. Here's the goal. Is it yes or no? Did I meet it? Not a vague kind of thing. Well, yeah, I kind of half met it. Does that count? It's better if it's no. This is what I actually was trying to do. Did I or didn't I? Because I think that's more motivating for us, and it's more objective. Okay? Clear so far? Are you still scared? Did I scare you at all? Anyways, maybe not. So here's an example, okay? So we're going to just go through some steps of setting a goal for yourself, and then we'll go to the hands-on kind of activity. So make it specific, like I said. Difficult, it's a challenge for you, but it's reachable for you. It is realistic, it's achievable. Okay? So in the research domain, which is the goal example I'm going to use here, you don't say, I want to publish more. You wouldn't, you shouldn't say that. Instead, you say, I want to publish in that journal, or I want to write up and submit the X study. Okay? And I would be at this level of specificity. I have this project, it's been a back burner project for me for the last 3 years or something. This year, I am finally going to write that up and submit it somewhere. And maybe your goal is not just submit it, but it's accepted, which is a whole different thing, because that means accepted. Accepted means submitted, then revisions if you're lucky, right? And then maybe another set of revisions, and then that's a little harder to predict. So at least for me, I want to at least get it out there so it's under review by the end of this time period, that particular study. Then I have other goals too. This one, this one, this one. So that's what's good. That's the way that you should think about your research goals or your teaching goals or your service, for that matter. So setting a deadline is good. This is where the time management stuff comes in. So, and this is kind of like, how are you going to achieve, what are your plans to achieve that goal? So for me, I got this back burner study. It's been sitting on the back burner for the last 3 years. By the end of December is when I really would like to get that submitted. I actually have a few things like that. I'm probably not going to get them submitted by December, but I have that goal, and the more specific you can be then it's just like, it's really easy then. It's a yes, no when you come back to the assessment part. You don't want gray areas as much as possible for a plan like this, but you want realism. Okay, so once you've set it down, here's a really clear goal. That makes sense to me. I think I can reasonably get it done by this time in June, half a year from now. Then it's also very useful to think about what potential obstacles do you have towards reaching that goal. Okay. In Shelley's case, you're not going to be able to do anything until the end of the semester probably, right? So all that reporting and all that stuff is done. If you have some things in your department circumstances or your personal circumstances or whatever, then, okay, that's going to be an obstacle. I got to go back and reconsider that timeline for that deadline for myself. There's not a right or wrong answer here. It's just being planful. You see that, right? Okay, so another step is, are there ways to get help in what your goals are? And that depends on whether it's teaching, research, or service. But in the research domain, I'm a big fan of collaboration. And if you can develop collaborative relationships, sometimes those take time, and they do take time to develop, but once they've developed, that's a real boost. It can really help you a lot. So I'm always suggesting that to anybody, new faculty or seasoned faculty, that if you can find groups that can help you. They don't have to be here. They can be elsewhere. You can continue on a relationship from another school before you came here, or you can develop new ones based on conference meetings and things like that. So that is a function of what your situation is and your personality and your discipline, for that matter. Your discipline might be one where you really are expected to do things on your own. We have some departments like that, and that's what you're evaluated on. What have you done by yourself, first author, only author? That counts more than if you collaborate. But at the administrative level, I've heard the provost say to, like, Faculty Senate, for example, and some other contexts, that we want of external funding. Almost all sources of funding now are interdisciplinary. And so to not count that or have that count against people doesn't make sense at all. Paraphrasing him there, but close to a quote unquote. Okay, so that's just and you want to look at it goal by goal. Is there anything with this goal, for me writing up that paper, is it too late to have anybody involved in that project? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes I will approach somebody, a potential collaborator, and say, I've got this data set, it's been on the back burner, I really want to finish it this semester, would you be interested in it? I have something like that right now, somebody who's waiting for me to respond now because they're waiting for the data set, and I haven't sent them to them in the last week or so because I'm so behind on everything else. But that's just, look for ways to counter the potential obstacles, the reasons why things have been on the back burner for so long. Okay, and this one, the next step, there are people who do research and who theorize about goal setting and the goal implementation process. So this is really kind of drawn from that. I should have mentioned that previous versions of this presentation were conducted by Jackie Gilbert and I. Jackie's in management and marketing. And she's kind of like a time management expert on campus here and really nationally. She's really good. She's like the most organized person I know around here on campus. And so some of the stuff has come out of what she's familiar with in terms of the goal setting literature as well. So I do want to credit Jackie for that. The benefits, though, this is something that, why would this be a good goal for you? There are typically tangible benefits. The clearest example in a research case is my promotion and tenure committee is going to see that as a publication. And it's going to count because I need like 8 publications or whatever it is for your department. And so, okay, I'm going to check that off. It could be that, but we argue that there are also these less tangible benefits. And this is where it's a little bit like, how would you feel if you finally got that project off the back burner? And you don't know until you actually get it off the back burner, maybe, but you can visualize it or actually think about that. It'll be so nice because I'm thinking about that right now with my project. Once I get that done, I can finally move to these other projects that are even farther on the back burner. That'd be good. And then I could try out some new things. So, that's what I think a lot of us do, and we're just so overwhelmed with all the responsibilities that we have. So is there a way to be compartmentalizing and segmenting and systematically working towards your success? We can't, by the way, guarantee that you'll succeed. We have been, that's not part of our mission here at the center. If you follow our advice, we guarantee you that you'll get promoted and tenured, rehired, whatever it is, and that you'll get further promoted and tenured later on too. Sorry, we can't really promise that, nor would we want to because it's so different in all the departments and your situation and stuff like that. Okay, so are there specific skills that you need? This actually gets back to the collaboration argument, or that point, that in order for me to really move on that paper, that study, that project, it'd be nice if I could get somebody with maybe methodology skills or library search skills or statistical skills. Often in my discipline, that's the thing, and that's where some of my collaborations have come from. I got these data, and here's what I like to do, but I really don't know how to do that. Do you know how to do that? Yes, I do, and here's some ideas. That's one of the projects I have right now. My colleague is waiting for me to send them the data, is that, yes, this would be a good data set, and you could do this stuff, and I'm an expert in that. Great. That's, you want to look for those kinds of things because if you're doing it the lone wolf style, just you just can't. It's really hard. I shouldn't say you can't be productive. It's much harder to be productive. You look around and you look across other universities. There have been studies done of people who are highly productive in their fields. And one of the highest criteria, one of the things that comes out most commonly is they have lots of collaboration. They collaborate with their former students, they collaborate with people that they went to graduate school with, and they develop collaborations not just locally, but internationally quite often. But that's one of the reasons why I'm always saying collaboration is there's so many good, valuable components to that. So I want to keep pushing that. But there might be a research technique, there may be a methodology. If you can't learn the skill yourself, then you find somebody who's willing to work with you and do that. And we do that. People here do that. People who are very successful researchers here are known for doing that. Can you help me out in this? So finally, we're talking about developing a plan. Okay, where was that? There we go. And I have a whole bunch of text here, but it's basically like, here are the kinds of questions I might ask myself. Now, I've finally gotten a pretty well articulated goal. Here's my my barriers, my obstacles, what I'm going to do to get around them, and so on. So do I have time then to go and find out about something? Do I have time to think about when am I going to actually come up with a writing plan if it's a writing project, and so on? Okay. And the key point here is goal by goal you should think about. And the other key point is not just in research, goal by goal in teaching and research and service. So this takes work. It's not something that you should just do lightly if you really want to get the benefits of it. You have to sit down, you have to think it through, and you have to discuss it with other people. And that's one of the services that we provide. One of the services I provide in my position here is looking over and discussing with you your faculty development plan. Does it make sense? Is it reasonable? I had a case last year where it's like, you're really trying to do all these things? Are you sure about that? And the faculty member said, yeah, I'm already doing these. Great, wonderful. And they're doing very well. They have no surprises. They're very confident that they're going to get promoted and tenured when that comes up next year. Great. I mean, that's where all of us should be to succeed, to make sure that we're successful. Okay, so here's the practice activity finally, after all that talking and blah, blah, blah. Okay? And what it is the actual template, and it's broken down into the 3 categories: teaching, research, and service. But there's a 4th category that was suggested by a participant in our Faculty Fellows program. That sometimes it's not just within those domains, but it's more general plans that cross multiple domains. So depending on your situation and your expectations, there might be. So you'll see there's a 4th page on here. But this is because of the time interest. This is really a rush job, all right? But I wanted to share it with you. You can take this with you. We're not going to collect it or anything like that. This is a template that we will email to you that you can actually work with. And just take a few minutes on each one. And if the 4th category doesn't apply to you, the kind of cross-domain, just skip that. But come up with at least one teaching goal, one research goal, and one service goal, if you can. And work your way through. Starting with assessment, then the goal, then the plans. Don't worry about the outcome because that's not applicable in this case. not quite 10 minutes, but if you could finish your current thought there, I wanted to just do a few final things here. Then we can finish up. Let's go ahead and just pause there. Sorry to interrupt you. It's great. Get into this, but you'll take this with you, and like I said, we'll send you the digital version of that, which is the one that you're really going to want to work with. You can just type in stuff there if you want. But I was just curious, did you find anything here that was particularly easy to do for this little exercise?
Except for things that are already underway.
Okay. In terms of specific goals, I'm already working on that project.
Right.
It's easy to come up with those and to come up with a plan on how to actually meet those goals. Anything else easy you find no problem at all in coming up with stuff to put down?
Weaknesses.
No. Okay, things that you want to improve upon or be stronger in, or things that you might have to improve upon, right? That you've already got that message from your department maybe that you should be doing more of this and that. Okay. What about the opposite question? What was hard about this? What was difficult? Anything?
Probably being more specific than I need to write more. I need to find time. Like the task is, so how are you going to find the time? When? How specifically?
That's the hard part. It may be the hard part is actually finding the time to do it, right? It's easy to say, here's my plan to do it, but how do I know I'm actually going to meet that, stick to that plan? Yeah, that is. Was there anything else in terms of generating that you found to be difficult?
I have some creative activities that I need to do that if you have an idea, it's easy, but generating the plan, the idea, or what direction you want to take something, and that sort of thing.
Actually implementing.
Implementing it's easy once you know what you want to do, but figuring out, oh, what do I want to do? That's for me, in the creative area, that's the hard part.
And some of that you can't really, right? That's the challenge, right? You can't really be specific about that. You just have to see how it turns out.
But it does help keeping that on the forefront so that your brain is considering that.
Yeah, no, even in my realm, I can think of examples like that where I have what I think are really interesting research ideas or a writing topic that nobody's written about that or talked about that. And sometimes I don't know. That's why I have these back burner kinds of things. But if you can actually have them in your plan and then see that, oh, it was in my last year's plan and the year before that, something's not. I'm not getting it to the point where I really want to get it to. And that's, to me, that's a record for me. And that's what I said I didn't have. And if you have that, maybe I should just drop that project after 3 years and I'm not getting to it. Why, because I'm not getting to it anyway, right? So maybe I should reconsider my priorities and so on. So I'm trying to illustrate to you how you can use this as a developmental tool. And that's like the major value of this kind of plan. So so there's 2 more slides. One of these is, what do you do with this now? And in some ways, that's as crucial as the here's my plans to meet the goals part. This is. And it's crucial in like subtle ways because it helps to bridge the gap between those expectations, which may be vague or contradictory or confusing, and what you actually do. And when we look at problems that people have had in their departments, 3rd-year review or promotion and tenure or rehire or whatever, typically it's a mismatch of expectations to what I end up doing. And so that's pretty clear that you can figure out what you should do to avoid that situation. So ways to do that is your chair, depending on your chair and how busy they are, how big your department is, and there's all kinds of other factors. Or if your department has a mentor assigned to you. And that really also varies widely across departments. A few departments are really good, have really formal, organized, structured mentoring programs. If you don't have a department mentor, find somebody that can do that. We do that out at the center. We can actually serve in that capacity. The university 2 years ago was really interested in developing, making sure that all departments had formal faculty mentoring programs. But then this thing called the Complete College Act kind of kicked in, and now it's just like really, really back burner stuff, unfortunately for us. Now we're expected to do even more, and we never got the mentoring program put into place. Sorry, I'm editorializing here, but that's what happened. So find whoever you're comfortable with. The chair often is a good person to do that with because you know how it works. The chair considers you. When you go up for promotion or tenure, they have a vote, as does your promotion and tenure committee. Okay? So this is why I would consider talking with both, some member, somebody, and maybe in my program or something, somebody I'm comfortable with currently on the committee, about your plan. They're not like stepping out, they're not doing something they're not supposed to be doing or anything like that, because they're not formally doing a review of you. You're just asking for feedback. Here's what I was thinking of as kind of what I should be doing in the next year or so. What do you think? Does this line up pretty well with what you all typically look at when you're doing a third year review or promotion and tenure decision? That's easy for somebody to say, yes, no. If you can do this stuff, I think you'll be great. Or, no, I think you're balancing a little bit too much on the research side and not enough on the teaching side, maybe, or vice versa. That's the real, to me, that's like I was saying, that's the real value of, and notice that it helps to address the lack of agreement of expectations or the unpleasant surprises that you want to avoid, right? This helps to prevent those from happening. Sometimes you might want to meet with your dean. Depends on your dean and how busy they are and stuff. But, at least once before I go up for promotion and tenure, I'd like the dean to know who I am at least, And so I might, especially if I've got, I don't know how I would call it here. I'm getting contradictory information here, or I'm getting consistent information. Usually if you're getting consistent information from both the chair and the committee, I would be pretty confident about that. But I still might want to talk to the dean about it. Because there's been situations like, from the dean's perspective, working on books, co-editing books, for example, instead of publishing empirical articles in some departments, are valued differently by the dean and the administration as it goes up the line compared to your promotion and tenure committee or your chair. So I've known cases where the department chair thought that was great. You've co-edited a couple of books in the first 5 years you're here, whereas department promotion and tenure said you need to publish more, that is, empirical. And then the dean said, that's great, as it goes up the line. So that's where, especially if you're doing some things that are innovative or a little bit different, or your department isn't really used to the things that you're bringing to the department. It's just, I don't want to say you're, CYA? I don't want to say that. I'm just saying, the more information I get, the better it is for me. And that's going to be my last point here. Who's been recently promoted or tenured in your department? And what was their experience? I found that very valuable. And you talk to people, that's often very useful. You have people that say, it worked, I just flew through, it was smooth. How'd you do that? And why? Because, I figured out this is what was necessary and I kept in close touch with my mentor, if you have one, or whatever. Or it was terrible, here's what happened. Like, what a disaster or something. Why? Okay, I don't want that to happen to me. Can you tell me more about what happened in your case? And usually, if they're still here, they'll tell you. Because that means they succeeded despite the terrible, or the, and that's pretty common actually. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of it. It's just like you're being critically evaluated by your peers. I think particularly the department promotion and tenure chairs, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but mostly on the no side of that, is at least what I observed. Depends on your situation, depends on your chair. But notice that if I get information from all of these sources, you're going to be in that category of faculty that, your plan is good, you're on the right track, you've got the information that you need. That's where you want to be. That is the kind of plan you want to develop. Somehow or other, how you can actually develop that. That's what you're looking for. Okay? And then the next steps are doing the following now. Like I said, we're going to email this template to you. And if you're in the Faculty Fellows program, anybody who's in that program will actually get this too, because a lot of people couldn't actually make it today. They let me know that. Then you also, one of the roles that I play is to do a brief look at that. You can send it to me, we can talk about it, especially if you're having difficulty with it. Or if you really like it and you want to get some external perspective. You still, though, to develop the plan, you do really want to go into your department, the chair, if possible, and other people that have had that experience before. So for sure you want to do that. You could have our feedback, my feedback, before you then discuss it with your chair. That's probably a good idea. But I've had people that have done both. I've already shared it with my chair. They think it's really good. What do you think? Yeah, have you thought about this? Or don't you think this is cool? What if you can't make this? What if this goal isn't reached? How upset would you be? And how much is the expectation is that you really should meet that? There's some concern. People have concern that if I share this with my chair or informally with a member of promotion and tenure, is it like binding or anything? It's not, unless your department has a yearly plan that you're supposed to do. Some departments do. Okay. This is not binding in any way. You need to make that clear. This is just what I'm trying to be more strategic about my movement through. This is what this is. Will you help me? This is the mentality you want to take. Okay, so then you finalize it. You sign it. Okay, that's what the last page is. I don't know if you got to that point. But that is where, like, you share it with your supervisor, your chair, or your mentor. You could fill it in. You could change the label there, whatever works best for you. And that puts it more out into the public. And that is a crucial part of it. I would strongly recommend that you do that. That you don't just keep it yourself, or you just share it with me. I could sign it, yes, we reviewed it, but that doesn't really mean anything. You want to have the people that have control over your future life, right? That's your department and your promotion and your college. It's better to share it with that. And then once you've met that time frame, whatever it was that you set, you do want to go back and do that post time frame assessment part of it. And after you've done that, the outcome assessment that's often a good time to go back and talk. Look, I was able to do that, and here's where it's making it a little more public. There's a little more responsibility associated with that. Research on goals, for example, if other people know about your goals to lose weight or become more physically active or something like that, you're more likely to stick to those goals. Because they know. Even if they don't ask you about it, they still know that you had this goal to do this somehow or other. So that's what we're kind of trying to play into here with these goals to ensure your success. And then the last point is, don't you love this? They say on shampoo bottles, you'll never stop washing your hair if you follow the directions. Lather, rinse, and repeat. Basically, you just do this over and over again within your time frame. And that's the strategy. And you might find really, this isn't really helping me anymore. And that's okay. If you can do it a few years and you've figured out that now I have a pretty good handle and there's not much that's really going to change and stuff like that, then you made progress, and you've increased your chances of success. But for me, had I had this, I would still be doing this. I do this sort of now, not in a formal sense, but I do set out what my goals are each year roughly, and I try to meet those and so on. So eventually you'll settle into a pattern where you are able to be successful. This is a way to get you to maybe get there more quickly. Okay? Last thing is, I'm just going to throw all these up here. This is the last slide. And these are just some of the teaching resources. We haven't talked too much about that. But if you have whatever your goals are, if you have specific goals about, I want to do more of certain kind of teaching, then we have a lot of stuff that we're doing here, workshops like that. So you're probably familiar with these. You know about the EXL courses. We have workshops that focus on the things that they're actually evaluating on the student evaluation of teachers form and things like that. We are about to start a workshop series on student engagement. That's a big buzzword right now. The administration is really, why are our students not succeeding? Why are they leaving? We need to engage them better. And so we're going to have so you'll see those workshop announcements come out. On the research and service side, we have less of that. But part of my job is more on the research side in particular because I have a lot of collaborative experience, for example. So I can help you with that. On the service side, less so, but we have people here at the university who are really, really good and strong in service. And so there's plenty of help for these kinds of things. And mostly what comes out of here, though, is because it's our teaching and learning center, are things like this. The last point is that teaching mentor program. If you're in the faculty fellows program, you've seen that. Do you want to work with an individual teaching mentor, trained teaching mentor? And at this point, we have more demand than we have supply. And so we're going to have to try to figure out how to get more trained teaching mentors because a lot of people are interested in that. I will, in closing, give you one more thing, a little preview. We haven't rolled this out yet, but we are doing a pilot this semester, and we're going to roll it out in the spring as the plan. Have you heard of a thing called Small Group Instructional Diagnosis Activity, SGID? It's something that other schools have done, and we were made aware of it by a faculty member who went to a conference and they demonstrated it, and so she wants to do that in her courses. And so now we're going to do that as a service to the faculty. So this will be something in the spring that we'll offer to you. And it's basically set up for mid-semester, right about now. We come into your course as a center representative. Okay? It's not evaluating you as a teacher. It's feedback on how the course is going. What's working well, what isn't, suggestions for change. And it's a structured activity, takes about half an hour. We provide a summary report, just give it to you for your eyes only. So we'll be offering that as a service. We're excited about that. We think we've done a couple pilots this week, in fact, and it seemed to work very well. So that's the kind of stuff that we'll offer. But my position, again, is on the general balance and juggling side of things, too. How do you balance teaching, research, and service? If you want to find out who could I potentially collaborate with on some research project, I don't know your discipline necessarily, but I know a lot of people. And I know maybe some people that you might consider to collaborate with. And it's easy for me to say that. I've collaborated with a couple of you already who are sitting here. And that just kind of emerged out of our mutual interests and things like that. You want to do that. It's more fun. It's what makes this job fulfilling if you can find those kinds of collaborators.
Another good resource for finding collaboration is Redeem, because you know who's doing what research.
And you might have in your college some programs where we're trying to get people pulled together to do some interdisciplinary research, like in our college of behavioral health sciences. We have a formal program where we're trying to get faculty together for that. So we have your name. We know you're here. We just need your M number. No, we don't need that. I'll go ahead and send out, probably before I leave today, I will go ahead and email. Are you all on the faculty fellows for this year? Robert, you're not. You were last year, right? Shelley, are you? Everybody else is, right? So you're on the list, so I'm going to send out the PowerPoint to everybody, this thing, and then I'll also send out this template. And so at this point, if you're in the program, you have to decide when you want to start your formal plan. And it might be better to wait until spring, really, because if you're brand new, I still got to figure out what the expectations are and things like that, and I'm going to implement my plan for next year. If you're comfortable starting it now, that's fine too. It's just what is going to be your time frame. If I was going to start it now, I would still stick it, to like the end of May or something like that, kind of like the end of the spring semester, maybe a little bit beyond that, which is a little bit unfair to you because that's only like what, 6 or 7 months or something, or even less than that. Whereas normally you want to have it for the entire year so that you can balance and juggle with that kind of thing. But up to you. What we expect out of the Faculty Fellows program is you have the plan by the end of the spring semester. So you could wait on that, think about it, try out a few things. Actually, if it was me, implement a few things for the coming semester, and then see how they fit into what your overall plan is. That's the goal. Any questions? Or comments? Or it's not scary, is it?
I have a quick question. I realize you have 5 minutes left. Yeah. My quick question is, across the department, that our university have a general expectation for the faculty's tripartite area.
Yes.
What are the general
Yes.
expectations?
If you ask the provost or Dr. McPhee, and you know, the sequencing is after it goes to the university, after it goes to the department, it goes to the college committee, then it goes to the provost, and the provost makes his decisions. Okay, and then it goes to McPhee, and then it goes to TBR. Generally, after McPhee says there's no issues, TBR just rubber stamps. There's no, typically, I don't think there's ever been a case where TBR said, "Well, we don't like this person. They've been in the news for some negative thing. You know, we think you should get rid of them." That's never happened. The expectation is that we're a teaching institution first. McPhee said that last year. Dr. McPhee said that last year at the faculty senate. Will never not be, at least in the foreseeable future. So your teaching has to be good. Okay, so in terms of your prioritizing of goals, you want to make sure you're, not all of us can be above average by definition, right? But you want to make sure that you're doing well, you're meeting or exceeding the departmental average if you can in that realm. And then on the research side, there's a huge amount of variation across departments. Because some departments emphasize more service, and that's where the strengths of most, you know, you have to be strong in 2 of 3 typically, and there's some leverage that way. Even if it's service and teaching, there is still some minimal research expectations. If your research expectations are, if you're being told 2 or 3 publications is sufficient, or 5 by the time you go up, let's say, in 5 years, and you're pretty confident that that's what they said, then that, I mean, you know, that's what I'd aim for, and making sure that my other things are strong. It's hard to answer that because, but from the university's perspective, it's very hard. I've heard cases where the people that don't get it, don't succeed, are typically it's teaching. You know, if you're not a good teacher and you're getting and you're not responding to the developmental feedback you're getting, you're not taking advantage of the resources and stuff. See, there are ways to counter that by demonstrating that you are taking steps to improve your teaching, and that counts for you. But if you can't overcome that, then that's usually the case where people don't. And sometimes it's before they even go up. They got the message, you know, and they go elsewhere.
Is the teaching being evaluated solely by student evaluation?
Unless you have anything else in your department, usually the classroom observations and things like that, those are typically, in some departments it's required that you have that, and it's part of your evaluation packet. But the short answer is yes, it's the student evaluations that are the main criterion because it's numerical and it's standardized across all departments and it's fair, even if the measurement instrument is crappy. Well, it's not crappy, but it could be improved.
Better than it used to be.
Mm-hmm. It has been improved
It's
upon.
less crappy than it was.
That's right. Yep. But so yes, there are things that you can do, and that's why, you know, like doing the faculty fellow, getting that designation, it only counts like that maybe, but it's showing that, you know, we're trying to make this, say this is a significant thing, you have to do a significant amount of work. I think the center is pretty well respected in terms of what we do and stuff like that. So you can do things above and beyond what's expected of you that puts you, you know, in that safe category. I think that's accurate to say that. On the service side, harder to say. In my department, we have hardly any service expectations. Serve on a committee or 2. Did you do that in your first 5 years? Yeah. Some departmental committees, maybe a faculty senate committee or 2. That's all you need to do. We're looking at your teaching and research. That's what we do. It could be very different in your department. If you could take a little bit of time and provide feedback. We do try to repeat this every year, so this actually helps me. We have a little box here. If you put that your eval form in that, of course, we want to keep records of, to show that we're actually making a difference and justify our existence and that kind of thing. And now we can stop the recording.